All right, what we're going to talk about today is we are going to talk about the menu bar and adding our menu system to it. Okay, it's going to be really simple. We're cutting back a little bit on this assignment, so we're really not going to do a ton. There's going to be one more demo just to finish things up. It'll be a short one. Today's is going to be a little longer, but it's going to be a short one so that you have time to finish this off. So anyway, we have a menu bar that's designed up here, and right now I've got to kind of put underneath the header. You can put it in the header, you can put it underneath the header. It really doesn't matter. A lot of people like to put it in the header though. You know, there's some conventions around that, but more than anything else, it's really not too important. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to turn off everything else except that. And we're going to do the same thing that we've done before, and that is we're just going to crop this image down here. So one of the things that helps is when you're cropping, see if snapping is turned on, and what that'll do is that'll help it snap to the edges of the object and any guides or anything like that that you've made. So I'm going to double click here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say File, Save As, and we're going to, I already saved it once this morning, but we're going to save as menubar.psd. Now I've gone a little big here. Let's size this down a little bit, but the reason why I did that is I wanted to show you something. One of the things that's really kind of important to take into consideration when you're saving any graphic element for a website in Photoshop is drop shadows. If I cut this too close with my crop tool like that, let's say, okay, the drop shadow is going to end rather suddenly. This is bad. It needs to fade out. So you've got to give it a pretty good sense of what's, you know, a good space around it. The other thing is you need to be very careful too. Let's hit no on this for a second. On the edges, if your drop shadow is dropping down and to the right or down and to the left, which is the default for that, okay, you have to be very careful. Now in this case, when I was designing it, you can see I set the angle straight up and down, and I was actually doing that because I knew I didn't want to make this any narrower, and I wanted this to go a full 960. If you have a drop shadow that's going off to the left and to the, you know, or to the right and down, you need to size your menu bar in a little bit. In other words, make it like 950 so that you have this ability to have that 10 pixels of extra space around it for your drop shadow to work. But I didn't want that. I wanted this just to go full 960 from edge to edge, so I set my drop shadow just to go up and down. Okay? But that's just a consideration you need to do. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use a similar process that I used for our background. There's no sense in me having this entire thing load, this entire image, when I can just set it to as a background image for a div and have it repeat in the x-axis, right? That's going to make this load a lot faster too on the web if I just have a little slice. The other thing that's really important is to make sure that I've got a pretty precise crop. So I've got my menu bar here, so I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to turn on my info so I can see exactly what I'm doing, and I'm going to start the crop tool. And I want to make it, you know, relatively even. So right here I've got 30 by 46, there's 30 by 45 right there. And you can see the width and the height, and the info right there is telling me how big my crop is. That's really good. 45 is easy. You know, 41 is going to be a little harder. I could go to 50, I guess, just to make sure that I have a good distance between this and the drop shadow. But in all honesty, 45 will probably be fine. So let's go back to 45. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on this, and now I've just got a nice little slice. Just got a nice little slice of that menu bar. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click Save As, and we're going to go put in the Images folder. Okay. But now I'm going to save it twice. I'm going to save it as a JPEG, once as a JPEG and once as a PNG. And I want you to see what happens here, because it's going to look, the PNG is probably going to be better for most of you. For most of you. Now in this case, actually, the JPEG might work because of an off thing that I'm planning on doing. But for now, let's just do this. So JPEG, there we go. Save it as a JPEG. Don't need to embed the color profile. Yeah, high quality is good because it's a pretty small item. Then I'm going to go File, Save As, and I'm going to save it as a PNG file too, which, do you remember what PNG does? Why would I say this is a PNG when I've got a drop shadow here? Do you remember? What do I have right here at the bottom?
Oh, you have
Transparency, yeah, exactly. I've got transparency at the bottom because of my drop shadow. So if I want this to show through, if I want the background to show through here, I have to have it set as a PNG. What's it going to make this transparent area when I save it as a JPEG? It's going to make it white, and the reason why it's going to make it white is because that's my background color. When it flattens the image, it's going to set that background color. So that background color is set to pink, by the way, it'll make it pink. Okay, but it sets it to that background color. Anyway, we've got this. I'm going to close this. I don't need to save the menubar.psd again. Now we can go back into our Dreamweaver here and start adding our code. Now, couple of things. So we need this menu bar. Do you remember how tall I made that menu bar? Well, okay, you're talking about the header, the menu bar. Do you remember what it was? 45. Okay, so it's 45 by 30, but the width doesn't matter because we're going to have it repeat. So what I'm going to do here is we've got our title top, and then right here, title top. Oh, see, yeah, that's not supposed to be there yet. Did I keep it? Oops, yes I did. Okay. Sorry, I just gave you a sneak peek. Okay, let's just make sure this still works. Okay, it still works. All right, so we've got this right here. We've got our header, which is 125 pixels tall. We've got our tagline that's dropped down. Okay, remember the last demo we had to set float to left for the logo. Then we had to do a surrounding div for these two. Float that to the left, essentially so that this all worked. But then we had to set two divs in here that had no float so that they would go top to bottom because I wanted them vertically. Now, to be in all honesty, this design is really starting to look a little crowded. I would probably rather have education, photography, and design right over here next to it. But because of what I was trying to teach you, I had to drop it down. And we'll continue that because with that, even though I don't think it's as good of a design, because the next portion of what I'm going to show you with the menu bar also gets to be a little complicated. You'll also notice that I changed the border of my main divs, the header, the content, and the footer to white so we could see them a little bit better. We're actually going to get rid of those today. We don't need them anymore. So anyway, so what we're going to do is right after the title area, I'm going to set another div. And we're going to call this div ID equals, and we're going to call it just the menu. Done. Now, one of the important things about this, well, let me finish it first. So now I'm just going to hit /div and do my notation and the menu div. Now, one of the important things is don't name your menu area bar thingy or this thing I don't understand. Or don't get too cutesy with the names, and here's why. And it doesn't really matter for this class, for what we're doing here, but if you were really building a website, the problem with that is that when Google is kind of crawling through your website, it's looking for your menu bar, because those are the main links. Now, theoretically, it's going to find it and figure it out anyway. But it just makes it easier for Google to figure out what's on your website if you keep to a conventional naming thing. So header, content, menu, you could call it navigation if you wanted to, or nav for short. It's going to understand that sort of thing. And that's just, it's kind of good style, Does it really matter? I don't know. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Okay? But so we're going to add our menu div here. And now let's just go here and under our tagline, but before our content, we're going to add our menu. Now here's our big problem. We're adding our menu, and how tall is it? 45 pixels, right? Our width is going to be the same as all the others, so we want 960 pixels, okay? So it goes end to end. You might not want that. That's completely up to you. It's a personal choice there. And then we're going to set our background okay, image to our, I'm going to set it to the JPEG first so that you can see how bad that would look. Okay, boom. And I'm going to say repeat only in the X. Well, it's doing it, okay. It's thinking. Now, the truth of the matter is, because the div is exactly 45 pixels tall and the image is 45 pixels tall, I don't need to set the repeat, the background, or the background repeat. Oops, I forgot to do this. Because it won't. Is that working? Background. Right? Yeah, background. Why isn't it giving me? Well, it doesn't matter. Okay, there we go. So anyway, I could. I wouldn't have to set the background repeat X because it's only 45 pixels long. It can't repeat in the Y because the div is so small. But so it is a little redundant. But at the same time, I like to do it because you never know when you might make a mistake or you might grow a pixel by accident, and then you've got a real mess on your hands. So now we're gonna do this, and we're gonna hit click, and then all of a sudden, crash. Major problem. Okay, the menu's totally in the wrong place. Everything's all screwed up. Okay, and you can also see how bad the bottom of that menu bar looks because it's not fading out. It's just going straight to white. But let's solve our positioning. Well, let's change it with the PNG first, actually. Then we'll solve our positioning problem. So I'm just going to go in here to the code, and I'm just going to change that to PNG. Since they have the same name but just a different ending. And now let's re-preview it. And now you can see how that looks a lot nicer. Why, oh why, do you think this is not moving up? I made a major problem, or a major mistake. I added a div to my header, but what did I forget to do to the header?
You have to divide the area up.
Close. That might come a little later, but I added 45 pixels of height to it.
Oh, but you didn't say what axis or what margin.
No. I added a div that's 45 pixels tall, but did I add that height to the header itself? No. So the header is still 125, but I just added 45 pixels to it. The problem being everything else, as you add it all up, needs 125. So there's nowhere for it to go. So it's kind of cramming too much in here. So let's see what happens when I add 45 pixels to the height of the div. Interesting. Nothing. Nothing happened. And here's the other reason why. Because I added it after this title right that I put in the last demo, which is floated to left, it's trying to float this one to left. Ah, crap. Okay? So what I have to do in order to separate these out is exactly what you were saying, except this time I have to do it differently. Last demo, I had to build one div here for the logo, and then I had to build a wrapper, what I call a wrapper div, for these two divs here, so that they could both get put to the side, but also be vertical. Now what I need to do is do a div that's going to wrap around those three divs here, so that the menu bar can fall underneath it, because it's still trying to float in line with the others. So now what I'm going to do is, and it's really simple. You just got to kind of keep your eye on where you are. So if I go over here, you can see I'm going to start right at the logo here. I'm just going to build a div, and I'm going to say ID equals, and I'll call this header top. Okay? So it's the top half of the header. And I'm going to go down here, and before the menu, I'm going to end that. /div, add my notation. Now you can hopefully see why those notations are so important. How would I know which one of these divs was which, right? Those notations become really, really key. So what I've done here is I have this header top. And I'm going to now go back up here and I'm going to add it right above the logo. Remember, I like to try and keep things in order. Header, top, okay. And my width is going to be 960 pixels. And my height, I'm going to set to the same as the title area, which is 125 there, okay. And that's the height of all this stuff here. If you look at the logo is only 122. But that div is 125. So if you set it to 122, I think it would mess things up because the title right area, the title area here is 125. So I got to set it to the biggest of the two. And then I'm just going to close that. So now these four divs actually, the logo, the title area, then the title and the tagline divs, those are all now encased in one big div. As soon as I save this, now all of a sudden the menu snaps back down to the bottom. Because now what you have is you have this div, the title top div does not have a float set to it. So that means the default is no float. And when you have no float, the divs line up vertically. Remember that? So now if I go and preview this in Safari, voila. My menu bar is where I want it to be, and we're good to go. So this is about this time that I'm going to start. Well, actually, let's talk about our menu first, and then we'll start deleting the borders and stuff like that, and start playing with some of the content a little bit. So now what I'm going to do is let's go back to Dreamweaver here. And it's really important you make sure that when you start doing this, I like to separate things by returns a little bit when I'm in the HTML here. So I'll just return. Okay, there's the header, and then there's the header div there. Give those a little bit of space, and then I'll put a space between the menu and the header top. But then I'll leave the header top stuff clustered together so I can just see in the code, this is a group of things, then this is a group of things, and then there's the header, so that's all a group of things. And then a lot of times I'll just put multiple returns between that and the content. It doesn't affect the web page at all. Those returns are just empty. They don't change anything. But it allows me, when I look at the code, to go, oh, here's a cluster of stuff. Here's a cluster of things. Another thing that can help you is sometimes when you finish a major div, like the end of the header, you can put that like that. Okay, whoops, somehow I did that. But I don't like doing that. I like just having it there. Okay, and I just look for it. And I know it's up to you. Whatever organization helps you figure this all out the best. So now, let's add inside our menu, we're going to start adding the actual menu items. Now you'll notice I didn't do this in Photoshop. I'm going to do it right here in Dreamweaver. For the purposes of this assignment, that's what I want you to do. You could use what we would call buttons or graphics for your website. We don't really have the time to do that in the week that we've got, less than a week. So we're just going to do it in text. So now I'm going to add another div, but I'm going to change something on you here. Instead of ID equals, I'm going to call it a class. And let's call it menu items, something really easy. Okay, and then I'm just going to say home. And then I'm going to end that div. I'm not going to do any notations for this because this is easy. Menu item. And then let's say photo, photography, whatever. Div class equals menu item. And then we're going to call that, let's say, oh, I didn't do education or teaching. Okay, whoops, I did the wrong bracket. There we go. Div class, menu item, design. These are out of order, but it doesn't matter to me. And then let's just do one more. Div class equals menu item. And we'll just call this blog. Oh, and it's always good to do a contact page, right? You want people to be able to email you or whatever. So there we go. So now I've got these, and as soon as I click here, you'll see that they're going to come up here. Now they're bursting out of the div, okay? Because why? They're vertical because I haven't set any CSS for this div class yet. Now, here's what's cool. When you work with a class is a way of setting or putting settings on divs all at once. So instead of having to do, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 6. Instead of having to do 6 sets of CSS, I can do 1, which is really cool. So watch, menu item. That's the name of the class. So we're going to go back up here, find the menu. I'm going to go back into my CSS. I'm going to hit a period and then menu item. That's going to set this up for the class. And what's going to be cool is anything I type in between these 2 brackets now is going to affect every single div that has the class menu item. So I can set all these up right away in one big fell swoop. So first off, let's just start with a width. I've got 6 of these, okay? I've got 960 pixels. So, 150 pixels would do. That would be about 900 pixels. That'll give me plenty. So let's go 150 pixels. Let's see how that looks. My height, let's make it the same as the menu bar for now, okay, which is 45. And then we can change that later if we want to. Float, left, and now, all of a sudden, boom. They all go in a line. Not too shabby. Okay, and that's because of the float. They all went in a line because of the float. So now we can do a couple other things with this. First off, I can set the font size and the font family. So let's, I don't know, Geneva's cool. And font size. Let's try 22 pixels. I like working in pixels because then I know exactly what size they're going to be. Let's click here. Oh, that looks pretty good. Now they're kind of top heavy, or not top heavy, but they're up a little bit. Let's center them vertically, right? So what I want to do is I can do that by adding some padding to this. So there's my menu item. I like to put padding and margins right underneath the width and the height myself. It's up to you guys. So I'm going to add padding, but only to the top. And then I'm going to add, let's say 4 pixels of padding. Now here's the key with this. If I'm not careful, then this is going to start bursting out of the menu bar div. And it can cause all sorts of problems. So when I add 4 pixels of padding, I have to take 4 pixels away from the height so that it stays the same size, because that actually adds to the size of your div. So there we go, save, and click in here, and they just moved down 4. That looks pretty good. Actually, 4 was a good guess, if I do say so myself. The other thing that we could probably do is, I don't like the fact that they're all the way over to the left, so I'm just going to go text, align, center. Ah, now we're talking. Let's preview this and see what happens. That doesn't look too bad. That looks pretty good. Okay, yeah, we got ourselves a menu bar. Now, you guys aren't going to do drop menus or anything like that. That's a whole nother lesson that would take days. We don't have time. So just your 4 pages right across the top or whatever in your menu bar. If you've got it down the side, same idea, just you don't have to use float left, right? I mean, you can set up a div down along the side and you could do that. Let's do a couple other things though. Let's push them over to the right a little bit, okay? So I'm going to go back into Dreamweaver, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the padding. Now here's the problem. If I use a margin on the menu items, the problem is then it will add a margin to every single one of them. We don't want to do that. We just want to move it over to the left. So I'm going to use my menu, which is kind of like my wrapper div or my container, and I'm just going to add a margin left there. So margin left, and let's just push them over 10 pixels. And then I have to be smart, and I need to subtract 10 pixels from my width so that it's the same size total. It's going to push everything over. Oops, I did the wrong thing. What did I do wrong? I added a margin, so it pushed it over. What should I have done? What would have kept the menu bar right here at the edge? Instead of margin, I should have used, I just used it like 2 minutes ago. Padding. Padding pushes things over inside the div. Margin moves the whole div over. So I'm, gotta be careful of that stuff. So let's go back up to my menu here, and instead of margin left, we'll just change that to padding, and watch it change over here. Whoops. Watch it change over here. Now they stay in the same place, but the whole look of the div changes. So that's a good way of looking at a difference between padding and margins and what they do. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's bump them over just a little bit more. 5 more pixels will probably do just fine. So I'm just going to go up to my menu, and I'm going to take it and make my padding 15, and make my width 45. And it's good to do that it's good to do it in little sections and make sure that it looks good. That's pretty good. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to make these links, and we're going to control their color and stuff like that. So let's go back to Dreamweaver. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight each one. We're not going to actually add a link here yet. What we're going to do is we're going to go down to this link thing, and I'm just going to put a pound sign in there. And you'll notice that all of a sudden the code changed. Now it says href, I don't know how you'd even say it, href, which is a hypertext reference, okay? And you can just add pound. And what that means is it's just not going to go anywhere yet. We'll add the pages in the last demo, okay? The links to the right place, but for now we're just going to do that. Boom. Okay, so now, oh, look at them, they changed. That's kind of ugly, okay? That's kind of ugly. So what we want to do is we want to change the way that this font looks. So let's do this, and you can have some fun with this. So what we're going to do is menu item. We're going to go in here. We're going to add another class item here. We're going to go dot menu item A. And so anything that follows this is going to be the styles for the links. So anything that's a link has a certain style. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of that stupid underline. So I'm going to go text, decoration, whoops, okay, and I'm going to say none. The next thing I want to do, okay, is I want to get rid of the color, because the browser right now is choosing the color, and that Dayglow blue is what it is defaults to. I don't want that Dayglow blue. I actually might want it to match the blue of the background. That'd be kind of cool. So let's change that. So we just go color, and then I'm going to choose a color that is as close to the blue as possible. I'm thinking, yeah, I'm thinking this one, 3399FF. Yeah. So click there and just see what that looks like. And then save, and then you go over here. Ooh, that's a little too turquoisey. So I'm going to go back in, and what's cool is I just delete the colon, hit the colon again, and then I can hit the color. I think last period I chose this one, 09F. It's almost the same. Let's see what it looks like in in Safari. Woo, that's really still very turquoisey. Let's just try one more. I'll just do one more, and even if it's not great, we'll do it. 06F. Let's try that. That's better. Yeah, that's a lot less turquoisey. It looks a lot more like it matches. It's still a little bright for my taste. I might pale it out a little bit, but that works. So now we can do any number of things to it when you put the cursor over. Notice what happens is, because it's a link, now the little changes to the little pointer finger, which is cool. Okay, does that automatically. Let's go into Dreamweaver again, and now we're going to build one more CSS for this. Menu item A : hover. And what this is going to do is going to build a set of instructions, okay, for what's going to happen when you actually hover over it. And we don't want the, we could try and turn the underline back on. So text decoration, and then let's say underline. Okay, let's try that. And then let's change the color. Let's go back to black. Let's go back to black for this. No singing. And let's just see how that looks. Now, whoops, no, I don't know what I just did. Go away. Now I'm just going to go to preview, and not a huge fan of the underline. The black's okay, but I'm not a huge fan of the underline. You know what else I think? I think maybe it should be black and then the blue becomes the highlight. What do you think? Yeah, let's try it. So go back into Dreamweaver and we can just swatch this. So let's just say text decoration, none. Okay, and then let's switch this. I can remember 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to copy this here, paste it into the hover state, and then I'll just change that to 0, 0. So now it's going to be black. Yeah, I think I like that. So let's try that here. It matches the logo a little bit better. Okay. Oh yeah, see that stands out a lot nicer. That's pretty cool. So it's got a little rollover basically when you are hovering. So that's kind of fun. You can try all sorts of things. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do. Text. Isn't there a text? You could outline. You could indent it. You know, if you wanted to move when you overdid it, you could. I'm not sure what a text emphasis does actually. I was looking for like italics. That'd be cool. But text height, and then you could do. I wonder if you can do so it would grow. So it was 22 pixels. Let's try 24 pixels. Let's see what happens this way. Well, I don't know. Here now we're experimenting. I've never done that before. Doesn't like it. Not surprised. Oh well. I didn't think. I tried forcing that. I don't think it. Try that. I don't know what that'll do. I've never played with this before. Nothing. Okay. But you can play with that stuff, and then if it doesn't do anything, just delete it, right? Don't leave it in there because you never know when it might break your website. So there we go. We've got a nice looking thing here. And now it's time to start changing our content and stuff. So the content, we wanted to have the background color, okay, be white. That was the way it was in my original design, colon. And now I'm going to get rid of our border, okay, don't need that anymore. And same thing with the header. Let's go up to the header here, and let's get rid of our border. We'll leave no background for that, right, because we don't need it. And our footer, let's get rid of our border there. We'll talk about the footer and everything. Let's save it, and let's preview it. So this is looking pretty good, except it's kind of weird here having the menu bar and then a slight blue thing, okay? And then the white of the content. Now, there's two solutions to this. One, I could go back to my JPEG, which would theoretically, if that white of the background was pure, would blend right into the content area. But you never know. Sometimes the white isn't pure. Maybe your background color was set off a little bit or whatever. So really what I want to do is I'm going to build a wrapper for my menu, okay, in here. Div ID equals menu wrapper, okay, and then I'm going to end that here, notation end of menu wrapper, and then I'm going to go up into my CSS, and just before my menu I'm going to say pound menu wrapper. You can call it menu container, whatever. And all I'm going to do is it's going to conform to the shape, the size of the div in it anyway. So I really don't need to do anything with width and height probably. But I'm just going to go background color, and I'm just going to set it to the same as the content div, which is just pure white. And now let's see what it looks like. Oops, doesn't like it. Something's wrong. See that? That's giving me an error there. Oh. Look, I forgot the ending bracket. Nice and simple. That's an easy one. Save, and let's preview. Now it looks like my menu bar is throwing a shadow onto the main content area. Okay. There's some other little things that I would change. I would add margins to the top of the menu bar, the menu wrapper now. I'd add a margin to that so that I pushed some space between these two. In actuality, I think I said this before the demo, I'd actually move these over to the right because I think that would look far better there and just let this space be. But this is way too crowded here, way too crowded. But now you've really got a decent looking website where you could start putting stuff in. So the last little bit, we'll talk about adding a little title at the top here to tell you what page it's on. And then when you're this far, basically you're about ready to copy it 5 times. You just put a title in for each page: home, photo, teaching, design, blog, whatever. And we're not going to worry about the content because we just don't have time. But essentially, you will have built a working website with one page. Does this make sense? Okay? All right.